Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Eat. And hello, I'm here in the flesh. This is the first video episode of season 2. So, this is the first episode on video for 2025. And I've missed you. I've missed this particular space. I got off to a rocky start in season 2. And then I let that momentum carry me into the remainder of those episodes. And I never got myself to sit down and use this wonderful software and plug in my mic to record a video episode for Let's Eat. But better late than never. We are here now. This is a big goal of mine moving into the remainder of this year, is to record majority of my episodes on video. For those of you who are listening through the audio, this makes no difference to you. However, I do share my podcast episodes on YouTube, and then also Spotify has a feature for the video. And it's so much fun to be able to do it in this capacity instead of just audio. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the podcast no matter the form, but I'm happy to be back here on video to talk about wellness. What else is new? We're talking about wellness today. So let's set the scene a little bit. It is a beautiful morning. Tally is in her crate and she has decided to be a little bit vocal this morning. So we're going to probably hear maybe a little bit of chatter in the background from my little girl, but it's fine. We'll make it work. I have myself a collagen matcha here with my Symbiotica Magnesium L-threonate. You know I love my matcha. I've been adding a scoop of protein to it, but I decided to not do that this morning and instead just do kind of the very basic of what I love to do, which is matcha, collagen, and my one supplement by Symbiotica, the magnesium. It just helps to bring so much calm into my day. And then I also have an extra large filtered water with my molecular hydrogen in it. This is a supplement. I know I've talked about this, but this is a supplement I've been taking on and off for a long time. And it helps to address free radical damage in the body, which then progresses into oxidative stress. This is not something that we can necessarily avoid entirely, just given the nature of the modern world, but adding in something like this can help. And I learned through genetic testing that my body actually has a really hard time managing it. And then I also learned through my own testing, functional testing, that I do have some oxidative stress going on. So this is my way of addressing that. So as we move into August is National Wellness Month. And to me personally, I think every month should be National Wellness Month. I think every single month we should be setting new goals for ourselves or seeking out different tools and strategies or routines or habits or what have you that help you invest in your health and wellness. And while that might not be the case for all of us, I get life is crazy and there's a lot going on. There's certainly a lot that we can do, even just within this month, that will help us realign maybe or reinvest in our wellness in a way that feels good. At the end of the day, there's no one size fits all to wellness. And that, I think, is not only comforting because you can define wellness and what it means to you, and you can find that in your own life and your own circumstances. And you can also allow that to ebb and flow through certain seasons of life. And then also, it makes it probably frustrating for someone who just wants to be told, well, this is what you need to do to be well. And yes, there's obviously lots of pillars in wellness. There's a lot of different kind of strategies and nutritional guidance, and we need to be moving, we need to be sleeping. All of that is very important, but it's up to you to find a rhythm within wellness that feels best in your mind and body. Because at the end of the day, what we want most is to see sustainability in your ability to uphold this lifestyle. And if you are expecting too much from yourself, or you are trying to take the lifestyle and routines of someone else and apply them to your own life, and they just don't fit, we are not going to be able to continue with them successfully and uphold those practices as we would in comparison to finding a routine that works best for you. So this episode is all about just that, right? We're going to be talking about wellness, my personal connection to wellness, what that looks like. I'm going to prompt some questions for you to start to let this concept marinate, to digest it a little bit more. And really, this is more of a thought-provoking episode. I have no plan. I have no agenda here, which can be dangerous for someone who is susceptible and vulnerable to tangents. But we're going to try and stay here on the straight and narrow and focus on the topic at hand, which is mind body wellness. And I want to really deliver this in a way that feels accessible to you, but also you leave this episode feeling inspired to go out and find your form of wellness for yourself and take the next few weeks of August to really cultivate that practice in your life so that you're able to see this moving into the new season, into the end of the year, and then moving into 2026 and beyond. That's the goal. Always, always, always the goal here is that you're taking these habits and they are sustainable for you now and beyond. And like I said, there's going to be ebbs and flows. I am no stranger to this, that there are times in life where things get crazy. Even for me personally, I've been thinking more recently, I've kind of lost touch with some things that I know are going to help me that I just have put on the back burner. There's too much going on. I just haven't made a priority. And it takes that self-awareness to say, okay, wait a second. Let's regroup. Where am I at? Let's assess. How am I feeling? What do I want to change here? And then kind of returning to those habits, those routines, those parts of your lifestyle that maybe you've lost touch with, that you know are going to help fill your cup, that you know are going to help you feel better, help contribute to your wellness, and being willing to dedicate that time and investment and priority to those things again so that they can become more commonplace for you, so that they become more a part of your day-to-day and your routines and so forth. So lots to talk about, lots to cover, and I'm so happy you're here. So thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the table, and let's eat. So let's talk about my personal connection to wellness. Now, as you all know, my mission in life is to promote this idea that our mind and body wellness are essential to living full, whole lives, not just to prevent disease, but also to live our best quality lives. And I might not be working with anyone on their job, on their relationships, on their parenthood, on their financial wellness, right? But inevitably, their mental and their physical wellness are going to play a role in all of those areas. So at the end of the day, your quality of life is contingent upon your physical and your mental health. That is a fact. That is a fact. Your quality of life is contingent upon your physical and your mental health. So when we start to really conceptualize that, and I don't want to be too blurring of the lines between health and wellness. I do use those words typically interchangeably, but I do want to be sure that I focus on wellness here as opposed to health and kind of explain the discrepancy that's there. But anyways, our quality of life is contingent upon our physical and mental health. You think about it. If you are not physically well, what is your quality of life like? If you're not mentally well, what is your quality of life like? It's compromised. Now, I do believe that a lot of people have learned to just exist within their current quality of life and have just accepted it to be the way it is. And that might mean like they're feeling fatigued or they're sluggish or they're aching, right? Or they're dealing with some sort of symptom that, impacts their mobility or their focus or whatever the case is. And then also their mental health. A lot of people are walking around extremely depressed and super anxious. I think now more than ever, we are an incredibly anxious country, incredibly anxious nation. And, I think more and more it's the younger generations that they're finding are more anxious. But anyways, I think a lot of people have just normalized that experience and just have accepted that their current state or their condition is how they're meant to live life. But that still speaks to the concept of our quality of life is contingent upon our physical and mental health and our physical and mental wellness. That is true. There's no arguing that. It's just a matter of how far have we gone to normalize our experience and saying that this is okay, this is normal, this is how I want to live. And that's the difference there, because a lot of us have just accepted this is just how it happens. This is how it goes. This is what happens when I get older. This is how it's going to be. And it's up to us to stop ourselves there and acknowledge that that doesn't have to be our truth. That doesn't have to be the case. That there is a ton that we can be doing on a daily basis to invest in our wellness in order to improve that quality of life. And that's going to then infiltrate into our experiences at work, our experiences in our relationships, our, financial health and wellness, right? All of that is influenced by what our wellness, our physical and emotional wellness looks like. So that I think is an important place to start, because I think first and foremost, we've just normalized unwellness, non-wellness, sickness, if you will. We've normalized sickness. And what we're not considering is how every single aspect of our life is determined by our physical and mental wellness. Period. Anyone can come at me with this, but it's true. If you don't feel good day to day, whether that's in mind and body, that is going to impact your quality of life. And I think people will say, well, this is just how it's been for decades, for years. Well, let's change that. Let's change that. Because even if your daily average is sitting at a 4, whether that's in energy levels, in focus, in digestion, in how you're feeling mentally, right? If you're sitting at a 4, I can assure you, I will put money on this. I don't know what I'll do, but I'll do something, okay? Because I feel so strongly in the fact that you can, no doubt about it, move yourself from a 4 to maybe a 5, a 6, a 7 even, just by examining your lifestyle, just by examining your daily habits and taking time to invest there. So that is the most important piece that I want to lay out first and foremost, because, and maybe it feels a little bit of tough love. I don't know. I think it's more just about the fact that I want to really emphasize how omnipresent the influence of our wellness or lack thereof is, and how important it is for us to draw our attention here if we want to, of course, if we want to. Not everyone wants to make this investment, and that's okay. My guess is that you're listening to this episode because you want to make the investment. So that is what we're going to work on today. But I do want to be sure that that message is made clear, that every single aspect in our life is touched by the quality of our health and wellness. And so if we're able to move into this month with that frame of mind and considering every single thing about my life will be better, my day-to-day experience will be better if I make this a priority, if I put this on the forefront, if I make this a priority that is above maybe a few of these other priorities that I am making a priority, right? I think we have to take a hard look at our priorities sometimes. And this is something that I work on with clients. I'm not in any position to tell someone what they should be prioritizing, but I am willing to shed light on how making your health and wellness a priority is valuable. and how it will make an enormous difference in every other area of our lives. But we just have to know that in order to then do that. You don't know what you don't know. And so if we're not looking at it through this frame of mind, then we're not going to do anything about it. I think it is almost every single person that I work with, that I talk with, that say, as soon as life gets busy, as soon as work gets chaotic, or we're traveling, or we're this, we're that, we're, the exercise, the healthy eating gets put on the back burner, which I get. I mean, that is so human. I am not in a position to say, well, shame on you, that shouldn't be the case, because I'm a human being and that happens to me too. But if we're able to know and we're able to sit with the fact that this is still important for me, in fact, this is going to help me navigate the busyness, the chaos, the life is so crazy moments, then we reframe the I don't have time to I need to make time for the sake of my wellness, right? For the sake of the fact that all of these things can be happening. And even further, I need to be leaning into the things that help me decompress, that help bring my body nourishment, that are going to fuel me to get through this crazy time. So, all of this to say, there's so much mindset involved here. And it really requires us to pay attention to what our mindset looks like, what it is determining as being our reality, and how we address it in order to move forward more productively. I can't tell you how many times I hear from people, I don't have time, I'm too busy. And that is fair. If in that moment you are deciding that all of these other things are more important to you than investing in your health and wellness, that is your decision, that is your choice, that is entirely your right. But if you're sitting watching Netflix, or you're sitting at a bar, or you are, whatever the case is, and you're still saying to me, I don't have time, we have to start kind of calling that out and looking at that a little bit closer to determine, do you not have time, or are you just not making time for what's important? Okay, so now I'm kind of on a tangent here. I didn't want to go down this road per se, but it does speak to this concept of, what are you making time for? What is your current priority? And how are we able to maybe reframe or rewire a little bit in terms of what it is we're making time for, so that our wellness can be on the forefront. Our wellness can be something that we do choose to make time for, no matter what we have going on. And that's the difference there. And that's what I want to encourage you this month, is to start to look at, where am I devoting my time? Where am I allotting my precious time that we all have 24 hours in a day to work with? And how might I start to see my health and wellness as more of a priority, knowing that my quality of life is contingent upon my mental and physical wellness? Moving on. So let's talk about wellness and what that means to me. So over the years, my wellness has evolved. Now more than ever, I feel as though I'm at the height of my investment. Now, that's not to say that I think the past few months, I actually was thinking about this last night. The past few months, I have definitely lost touch with certain things that I want to rein in on. So this is speaking to just my humanness and how I am human, and these things happen. And it takes the self-awareness to then decide, okay, I may have lost touch for a couple weeks, couple months, couple years, maybe a decade, who knows? Depending on your circumstances, you can define that for yourself. However, do I want to go another day without moving, without meditating, without adding more protein, without getting to bed, without distractions? If we do, if we want to go another day, that's fine. Maybe today's not the day. But in order to get back to where we want to go, we have to get started. right? In order to get back to where we want to go, we have to get started. We can't just continue to sit and wait. Oh, I'll do tomorrow. Oh, I'll do tomorrow. And in my case, I'm finding myself doing that is I'll worry about it whenever. There's a lot going on. It's easy to kind of fall out of the rhythm. It's also easy to lose touch with things that aren't habits, that are maybe less enjoyable, maybe than say something else, or we find challenging, or we simply just don't want to do, but we know we need to do it. And so for me personally, that has kind of been where my headspace has been, where I'm just thinking about the few things that I've kind of lost my groove with, and I really want to hone in on and make more rigid and more disciplined in what I'm doing from day to day, as opposed to just letting it go and, feeling it on the other side. Because I think I'm certainly feeling differently because I've lost touch with some of these things, or I've kind of become lax on certain things. So that's all something I'm working on, and I'll probably talk about more in upcoming episodes. But for right now, what we need to focus on is defining our own version of wellness. Okay, so for me personally, like I started to get to, but then I lost my train of thought there. Wellness in this instance is all about physical and mental wellness, right? There's a ton of other forms of wellness, but for today's sake, we're just talking about the physical and the mental wellness side of things. And over the years, they've looked very differently. I mean, there was a time where I was not mentally well, and as a result of that, I wasn't physically well. That was in my early 20s, my late teens, early 20s. And then obviously I've evolved and I've learned and I've started to step aside from certain things that do not contribute to my wellness and add in more things that do contribute to my wellness. And I think that's what is so beautiful about the transformation and the journey that this has been, is I have learned what makes me feel mentally well. I have learned what makes me feel physically well. And I am proactive on a regular basis to seek out those things. And that's really the guidance and the kind of conversation that I want to have here is it's not the fact that we get to a destination and we're suddenly physically well and mentally well and we've just achieved wellness. We are the self-actualized. If you're not familiar, that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you get to a point, which not everyone does, where you are just super self-aware and established and well-rounded and so forth, and all is well. That is not the case. There's no destination here. Spoiler alert, there's no destination. When it comes to our mental and our physical wellness, it is a continual investment. It is a continual investment, and it's going to fluctuate, and it's going to ebb, and it's going to flow, and it's going to shift, and it's going to stall, and it's going to look differently from day to day, week to week, month to month, season to season, over the course of our lives. But at the end of the day, if you can continue to set your sights on what are the things that help me feel physically well and what are the things that help me feel mentally well, you will always make a productive choice. Because we're not looking to get to a certain destination of wellness, right? It's not to say that you get to the finish line and that's it and you never have to shift or adjust or change ever again. Because that is simply not the case. And life doesn't allow for that, quite honestly. Life will not allow for that. Life, if you haven't noticed, is not linear. Life is a roller coaster. There are ups and downs and highs and lows. And some months, some weeks, some years, you're going to be killing it on top of it. And other weeks, it's just not going to be the case. And so when it comes to finding your version of wellness, it's really about, first and foremost, that acknowledgement. And realizing that your wellness habits are going to be tried at times. They're going to be challenged at times. And the best that you can do in those moments is the best that you can do in those moments. And like I said, there's going to be some moments where you have highs and you're killing it and you're on top of it and you're feeling good. And then other moments where you're just getting by. You're just doing the thing and you're doing the best that you can, filling your cup as best as you can, and acknowledging that this is just the season of life that I'm in. and this too shall pass, and it will not be here forever. But at the end of the day, defining wellness for yourself in those moments so that you are honoring that concept in no matter what season of life that you're in. I'll give an example. Back in January into February, when Lulu passed away, that was horrible. Horrible, 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 horrible. I was so unwell, so unwell. And the last 2 weeks, like when I knew oh God, I'm going to get emotional about it. The last 2 weeks when I knew that she was sick and I was just trying to make her comfortable, I was trying to, just pay attention to what was going on. And then ultimately having to make the decision to put her down and going through that. And then the weekend to follow, the weeks to follow, it was just dreadful. It was dreadful. And because I know how much exercise and how much nourishment means to me and how much that helped me in those moments, I leaned into those things. Now, mostly because that's just a part of who I am and my identity. And I've taken many years, many, many years to get to this point. But there were a lot of things that I couldn't do. I didn't go for walks because I didn't want to go for a walk without her. I kind of put all of my work on the back burner, which to me is a form of wellness, right? Taking care of my business and taking care of my work. I was sleeping a lot just because I wanted to kind of stay away from the feeling of being awake when I knew what was going on and the pain that I was in. Sleeping at least kind of got me away from that. It was just really tough. And in those moments, I tried to nourish as best that I could, not because I thought, oh, I'm going to be off track, or, oh, I'm going to, I can't miss days of exercise because of my progress. No, none of that. It was just the fact that I was feeling so horrible and so miserable, and I was mourning and I was grieving, that in those moments, I knew I needed to lean into the things that were going to help my foundation and help me feel well. But I was not going above and beyond. I was not expecting myself to go above and beyond. That was just my form of wellness in those weeks of grieving. And that was the best that I could do. And then coming out of that, my form of wellness changed, right? Because I started to get back on my feet. I started to feel okay again. I started to get back to some normalcy. And that's where my habits that were maybe like my higher order habits, we'll call them, were back in action, right? But at the time, it was just the very basics that were allowing me to nourish even the slightest bit to get through those initial moments of pain and hardship. And then on the other side, that season of life started to kind of fade, and I moved into a new phase of life and a new season, and my habits kind of shifted alongside that. So that's just one example of how wellness will shift. But at the end of the day, what I wanted most in those moments is to lean into the things that were going to help me feel even 1% better. And that is always going to be my guidance, is turning to the things in your day-to-day, in your life, that help you feel 1% better. Now, amazing if you have things in your life that help you feel 50% better or help you feel 100% better, right? All of those things are great. I know for me, exercise, immediately 100% better. Immediately. Maybe 98%, we'll say. 100% is a stretch, but immediately I feel better as a result of that. So I try to incorporate that as much as I can because I know I'm going to feel good as a result of this. And at the end of the day, that is what wellness is. Here's the tea. That is what wellness is a collection of behaviors that allow you to feel good more often than not, that allow you to feel good with more frequency than not. And that is really what this is all about. There is no formal definition of wellness, in my opinion. Yes, you could Google it and there would be a definition that comes up and that would be the definition. But in my personal belief, it is so individual. It is so based on you and your body and your mind and your needs and the season of life that you're in. And if we put pressure on ourselves to conform to a certain definition of wellness, that's not wellness. That's not wellness, because that's not your definition of wellness. That's the dictionary's definition of wellness, or ChatGPT's definition of wellness. And what's most important is that you are defining wellness for yourself. And my personal belief system and the way that I look at it is, how can I create a lifestyle that contains habits and routines that fills my cup, so that more often than not, I am feeling my definition of well on a daily basis, if possible, to then, as a result, improve my quality of life. That is really what I firmly believe is what we can look at wellness as. Because this gives you that flexibility, that malleability, that grace, essentially, to define that for yourself every week, every month, every season, every year. And it's not keeping you in this box that you have to be, 100% all in, fully well in order to achieve or pursue wellness. Because like I said, it's a daily investment. It's a daily journey. And every day is going to look differently. But the more that you can fill your day and fill your life with the habits and routines and behaviors that are going to allow you to feel well more often than not, with more frequency, that to me is really cultivating your form of wellness. And like I said, this can be physical, this can be mental. We know that mind, body, physical, mental health, they're one and the same. Okay, this has been my kind of mission since the start, is really showcasing how our physical and our mental health are interrelated and how they influence each other. But at the end of the day, you have to determine that for yourself. No one can decide that for you. And like I said before, there are certainly pillars that kind of fall within the category of health, right? Where it's like, oh, movement and sleep and eating certain foods. And yes, all of that is good and well. But when it comes to wellness, it has to be something that is customized to your life and your lifestyle and your routine and your day-to-day, in order for it to truly bring you wellness. Because like I said, if your wellness is causing you stress, I didn't say this, but I'm going to say this now. And I'm going to say it a couple times because it's so important. If your wellness is bringing you stress, it is not wellness. If your wellness is bringing you stress, it is not wellness. Okay, think about that. If it's bringing you stress, it is not wellness. You have to be aware of that, because the expectation that you're going to be well while doing things that are causing you stress, that's so backwards, and it's super counterproductive, and it's not going to get you to where you want to go. It's not going to help you feel well. So that is an important piece to this puzzle as well. And that's where it takes a lot of self-auditing to decide and to determine, okay, is this stressing me out, or is this actually making me feel good? Maybe I need to pull back. Maybe this season of life just doesn't allow for the 12,000 steps that I'm now walking outside at 10 p.m. because I didn't get my steps in today. Don't do that. Don't do that. Please, I beg of you, don't do that. Really finding your footing in this and allowing yourself to take time to reflect on your version of wellness and your ideal self, we'll say. That is one of the first questions I ask a ton of my clients is, what would your ideal self look like? What would your ideal self feel like? And using that as your guide to then determine, how am I to get there? That is one of the first steps in this process, because you have to know what you're aiming for in order to then take the steps to get there. And you have to define for yourself, what would it mean for me to feel physically well? Maybe it's without joint pain, or to be able to run a 5K, or to eat foods and not feel reactive, bloating, gas, digestive distress afterwards. Maybe it's getting 8 hours of sleep at night. Maybe that's really challenging for you. Maybe you have insomnia. Maybe you wake up after 8 hours and you're still not feeling rested. Maybe it's not as complex as that. Maybe you're just tired of leaning into the foods that you know are not nourishing for you. Maybe you're tired of avoiding exercise when you know you need to do it. Maybe you're tired of doom scrolling at night before bed, where you plan to go to bed at 9 and now you're up till 11 doing whatever the heck you're doing, probably on TikTok. That's my guilty scroll. But bringing your attention to these things, whatever that might look like for you, and deciding, this does not fill my cup. This does not align with the version of myself that feels well. This is not something that I want to do most often, because it is not something that's going to make me feel physically or mentally well. You have to call yourself out for it, right? Give yourself some tough love, hold yourself accountable, and then determine how you're going to make a change. Determine how, okay, if this habit does not make me feel well most often, with most frequency, what would make me feel well with most frequency, with most often? And it's not to say that you have to go from, 6 nights of doom scrolling to 0 nights of doom scrolling. If you go from 6 nights to 5 nights, and that's a growthful step for you, amazing. And guess what? You can work on it the next week to go down to 4 nights or go down to 3 nights. But giving yourself the incremental opportunity to identify the habits that are emptying your cup, we'll say, and then looking at ways to fill your cup instead. And the more that you're able to fill your day with those things, the more often you will be well with the most frequency. This should be the name of the episode. Feeling well most often with the most frequency. But that is really my ultimate encouragement for you, is to start to look at the things that do not fill your cup or that detract from your cup, right? There's certain things that fill your cup. There's certain things that don't do anything to your cup. They're kind of neutral. And then there's certain things that you're taking the cup and you are just dumping it all out. Okay. We all know those things. What are those things for you? For me, it's probably drinking alcohol, for sure, hands down. I guess I could get into certain things that help me fill my cup and kind of give you some inspo as we near the end of this episode. Definitely drinking alcohol. That is something that, boy, does it drain my cup for days. Okay. It does not serve me. It is not something that I welcome in my life very often, if at all, anymore. I do love a glass of wine. I do love a spicy margarita. I've said this on the podcast so many times, but that is something that I am not doing most often, and definitely not doing with frequency. Okay. Definitely not. And I'm okay with it. I'm totally okay with it. I love waking up, feeling good, feeling ready to rock. And that just does not happen when I drink. My sleep is no good. I am recovering for the day to follow. I'm just not well. I'm not my best self. And I just don't like feeling that way. And I think the more I've stepped away from it, the more my body has been like, yep, nope. So even if I have one drink, I'm still not well the next day. So definitely alcohol. I think staying up late definitely has been something that I have adjusted, and it's not always doable to not stay up late for, certain scenarios, but especially because I'm getting up early and now Tally's waking me up early. I try my hardest to be in bed by 9. And then I'm up usually between like 5 and 6, sometimes even earlier. But definitely going to bed and getting enough sleep I love sleep. I'm not a napper. Truthfully, napping is not my thing. I do not wake up feeling well. I feel disoriented. I feel really melancholy and lethargic, and I have all these existential thoughts when I take naps. So if I'm taking a nap, it's just because I've had something to drink the night before. And then think about that, okay? Don't feel well. My anxiety is through the roof when I have something to drink. And then I'm over here taking a nap because I hadn't slept well because I had alcohol, which alcohol does not help you sleep. For anyone who thinks that that's the case, it does not. And then I'm napping and I feel double worse. So it's just the fuel to the fire is just no good. So yes, sleep is really important to me. Other things that fill my cup: exercise, regular exercise. I mean, I feel so gosh darn good when I exercise. And I'm so grateful now to be able to teach Pilates and be able to exercise and teach others to exercise and have it as like a more routine part of my life. Not to say that exercise wasn't before. Exercise was something I am constantly doing, but now that I'm teaching regularly, it kind of gets me into a groove where I'm active more often. And so that is great. Eating well-rounded meals, of course, that fills my cup a ton. Certain things that I have kind of lost touch with, I've really fallen short when it comes to my breath work and meditation and really disconnecting. That is one thing I struggle with. And that is a problem. I really want to kind of hone in on that. So that's something that I'm going to focus on come the fall, is just giving myself time to disconnect. I was doing very well with staying off my phone for an hour or shooting for 2 hours in the morning and then an hour at night before I go to bed. And it's so, I mean, I'm sure a ton of you right now are saying, yeah, it's not easy. And it's not easy. And I'm saying it's not easy. I wish I was more disciplined in that, but it's hard, especially working from my phone and just, obviously being so connected all the time. So that's something I want to work on as I move into the remainder of August, but also into the fall. And there are so many others. There's so many other things that I look at as this drains my cup versus this fills my cup. And I am so grateful that I've been able to delineate between the two, and I lean more into the cup filling list than I do into the cup draining list. But at the same time, I feel as though the cup draining list can also sometimes fall into the cup filling list. And I want to kind of explain that briefly. For example, me going to bed at 8 o'clock every night, beautiful. Love that for me. Okay. But if I'm out with girlfriends and we're chit chatting and we're having, a great night, just talking about all the things, and I'm up till midnight. Yeah. Is that technically way past my bedtime? Absolutely. But is that filling my cup in another way? Absolutely. Same thing with I'm in Italy. Okay. I'm not in Italy, but I'm in Italy and I'm having this incredible homemade pasta dinner. You bet your bottom dollar your girl is having a glass of red wine with that gosh darn pasta. In that moment, I could say, well, this is a cup drainer. This is not going to make me feel well. But in that moment, that pasta is begging to be had with a glass of red wine. And in that moment, that is a cup filler. So you see how this kind of can ebb and it can flow and it can look differently. There are times and places for certain things. And like I said, your wellness is going to evolve. It's going to shift. It's going to grow. If you water it, of course, right? It's going to grow if you water it. But that's really the bottom line here, is there's no rule to it. There's no one size fits all. And that is what's so beautiful about this, is you can find what works for you. And in some cases, it's not like a cold hard stop of like, this is the cup filler list, this is the cup drainer list. No, now I'm making up terms here. No, because there can be overlap. Like I said, yeah, I would like to go to bed between 8 and 9 p.m. for sure. Absolutely. But if I'm having, wonderful conversation with somebody that I haven't seen in a long time and we're up hours and hours and hours into the night, that to me is so cup filling. Then if I were to say, no, actually it's past my bedtime, we have to, I'll see you later. That's where I have to be really aware of when wellness can become not wellness, non-wellness. And that I think is so important. And this is something I teach my clients. And every single time a client, and I can say this with certainty, I will say this and stand by this. And if you are a client of mine, this is how I operate. If a client says, I was up with family, or we're at, I don't know, we're on vacation, or, whatever it is. And maybe a non-nutritionally dense choice was made, or they had birthday cake for their grandmother's 99th birthday or something like that, right? And they kind of return with, oh, I could have done this, or maybe I shouldn't have, I am very, very empathetic around that, because I'm going to be absolutely not. I'm going to say, you were present, you enjoyed, you celebrated, you whatever. And that is more important. That is more stress reducing than sitting there saying, nope, I can't have this birthday cake because it's not nutrient dense, it's got refined sugar. No, thank you. And then sit there and watch everyone eat cake, and you sit there and just say, okay, like, this is fun, right? If you don't want the cake, then don't have the cake. I'm not going to say you have to go eat it. But do you understand what I'm saying there? When I'm referring to the fact that we lose our definition of wellness in those moments where we feel like we have to avoid and we have to, stay away, and that in and of itself, that is more wellness reducing than it is wellness inducing, wellness supporting, because you're not having cake every single day. You're having cake because it's your grandmother's, I don't know why I said 99th birthday. Let's say it's our 100th birthday. Okay, I don't know. Why did I say 99? I don't know. Her 100th birthday. And you're sitting there avoiding the cake because you feel that it's not wellness, it's not cup filling. No. If you want to have that cake, have the cake. Be present. Enjoy. Be with family. Be present. That's her 100th birthday. Be willing to celebrate and be there, because that is going to be the most cup filling option than it is avoiding, restricting, and not having it, and then stressing around that, and then being like, oh, I should have just had that cake, right? So I want to be sure that this distinction is very clear, that I am going to, more often than not, with most frequency, lean into the cup filling tools that I know are going to bring me closer to feeling physically and mentally well. That is going to be the priority. And then in some instance, there's some gray area, right? Where having that glass of wine with the homemade pasta, or staying up late to chit chat with someone, that is going to be what is the most aligned with my wellness than getting to bed early or avoiding the alcohol. Because at the end of the day, you have to be willing to be flexible in those moments so that you can lean into the things that are going to help you feel well. Bottom line. Deep breath. So that is the end of today's episode. I hope that this brought you value, and I hope that you enjoyed. It is so exciting to me to be able to talk on this topic. You know how much I love it, how much it resonates with me. And through the rest of August, I plan to share a little bit more on topics within wellness, just in celebration of National Wellness Month. But I do encourage you to reflect on some of the things we talked about today, some of the things that I shared around different concepts in wellness, what it means to be well, defining that for yourself, questions to ask yourself, and start to really examine your own routine to determine, are these behaviors allowing me to feel well more often than not with most frequency, or can I revise? Can I step back, reroute, rewire, do what I have to do, and start looking at this through a different lens? Because the mindset piece is huge too, right? You have control. If you're living your day-to-day at a 4, know that you have so much control in bumping that number up to a 5, 6, 7. Even if you're sitting every day at a 7 and you're like, no, I want to get to a 10. You can do that. You can do that. You just have to be willing to take a little bit of an audit, maybe dig a little bit deeper, look into testing if you're interested, and decide how to take the necessary steps to get to a 10. Okay, so thank you all for being here. I promise you more video episodes to come. And I wish you a day, a week, a month full of wellness in August. And until next time, be well.